Okay, I think we've got another question coming in from Mexico right now. Hola, ¿hay alguien en México que quiere hacerse una pregunta a Drox? Gracias, amigo. Adelante.
Así es. Soy Carlos y mi pregunta es la siguiente. Algunas veces, algunas personas piden una experiencia espiritual en el momento de elegir a su compañera eterna y otros no la hacen. ¿Cuál es su opinión respecto a eso?
Okay, that was a great question, I think, for all single young adults. His question was, he's heard that some people have had spiritual impressions and have prayed about who their eternal companion should be, and then some people have just found an eternal companion. So what would you recommend for young single adults that are trying to figure out what to do?
Should I take a shot?
Go ahead.
Well, I'll tell you, you young men and you young women, put your cell phones away, put all this technology away, and learn to talk to each other, face to face, eye to eye. My goodness, that's the way this happens. You've got yourselves in cocoons. You're not being normal people. Because you've got all this technology that's taking you here and there. Now I'll tell you just real quickly that when I came home from my mission, I went to a University of Utah. I'm sorry about that. University of Utah Hello Day dance. And one of my friends says, I've got a young lady that I'd like to have you meet. And if they've got a picture of her, I just have you put it up there. I don't know whether I sent that to you or not. But anyway, well, I danced from here to about 20 feet, and that's when they used to tag you out, you know. Some guy tagged me out, but I looked at her eyes just one time. And I said, this is a special young lady. I got to get to know her. She was very popular. I have to tell you that I ended up being the only true and living returned missionary that had all of the answers. I found out all of the questions and I answered it, but it took me 10 months to convince her that she ought to marry me. Now we have 7 children and 43 grandchildren and 86 great-grandchildren. And if you don't start looking each other's in the eyes, you're going to miss that when you're my age. When you're 89, like I am, what are you going to have? Who's going to take care of you? You got to have daughters to take care of you when you get older. So I'm just trying to be very direct with you. Get to know each other. Put away we walk into buildings and you're sitting in the whole bunch of you together and you're all looking at a cell phone. I hope that Elder Oaks and my voice haunts you now. That you'll put those things away and look up and say, hi, I'm Russ Ballard, what's your name? And you start a conversation. That'll help solve this brother's problem down in Mexico.
Yes, it will. And in terms of haunting you, I say, boo. I want to ask you a question, Elder Ballard. Where do you think your selection of that wonderful Barbara would have been if in the next 10 months you just went to places where all those returned missionaries hung out with a whole bunch of girls, kind of a general hangout get-together?
Well, probably the boy that she was waiting for on his mission would have come home and she'd have married him.
Now
if I'd let that happen, but I wasn't going to let it happen.
That's a powerful argument against hanging out.
That is.
That's a powerful argument against pairing off and starting to experiment with verbal relations with the opposite sex. How to talk to one another, not text one another. I heard the other day that an LDS couple in a city that I won't name had become engaged by texting one another in the same city, and they had never met personally.
Well, this is probably an overkill here, but I had a secretary and she was not married, and I said, "Are you dating?" And she said, "Well, I got an invitation on a date by somebody. He sent me a text." And I said, "Give me his name. I want to call him." And she knew right where I was going. I would have rung his bell big time. But ultimately along came the right one, and she's married and has 2 little kids now.
Elder Ballard, I knew this question about marriage and how do you know when you found the right one and so on. I knew it would come up, so I did a little research, because I remembered hearing a talk when I was president of BYU in 1973. That's a lot of years ago.
They were all in the spirit world.
That's right. And so were their parents. But in 1973, a well-loved apostle, a great authority on church doctrine named Elder Bruce R. McConkie, came and gave a talk at BYU in choosing a marriage partner. And I went back and looked up that talk, and I want to read you some of his words on that subject. First, so I don't take too much time, I'll paraphrase. He started off saying that being married to the right person in the right place is the most important thing we can do in mortality, and of course it is. And then he said, part of the challenge we have in mortality is to learn to hear and heed the impressions of the Spirit of the Lord, but also to learn how to exercise our agency. Things that we do ourselves on the basis of our judgment and learning. And he said, finding the right balance between agency and inspiration is part of the lesson we're to learn here in mortality. Now, that was leading up to what I'll read you from his words. He said, and I'm quoting here from Elder Bruce R. McConkie. It's a BYU devotional. I misread I said 73. It was 1974, if anybody's going to go back and research this. And the title is Agency or Inspiration, Which? And he applied that to choosing a marriage partner. Here's what he said. We're faced with 2 propositions. One is that we ought to be guided by the spirit of inspiration, the spirit of revelation. The other is that we're here under a heavenly direction to use our agency to determine what we ought to do on our own. And we need to strike a fine balance between these 2 if we're going to pursue a course that will give us joy and satisfaction and peace in this life and lead to eternal reward in our Heavenly Father's kingdom. How do you choose a wife? He continued. I've heard a lot of people from Brigham Young University and elsewhere say, I've got to get a feeling of inspiration. I've got to get some revelation. I've got to fast and pray and get the Lord to manifest to me whom I should marry. I might just say, I've heard that again and again and again, that same thing. Listen to what he said at that point. Well, maybe it'll be a little shock to you, but never in my life did I ever ask the Lord whom I ought to marry. It never occurred to me to ask him. I went out and found the girl I wanted. She suited me. I evaluated and weighed the proposition, and it just seemed 100% to me as though this ought to be. Now, if I'd done things perfectly, I'd have done some counseling with the Lord, which I didn't do. But all I did was pray to the Lord and ask for some guidance and direction in connection with the decision I had reached. That sounds like Oliver Cowdery's counsel, doesn't it? From the Doctrine and Covenants. Not waiting around till the Lord reveals who you should marry or until you get too old to marry. Some seem to be reaching for that. Some men seem to be reaching for that goal. I go back to Brother McConkie's words. A more perfect thing to have done would have been to counsel with him relative to the decision and get a spiritual confirmation that the conclusion, which I, by my agency and faculties, had arrived at, was the right one. Well, it may be a great surprise to some of you that a highly respected apostle said he didn't wait around for the Lord to inspire to him who he ought to marry. He just went out and used his power of agency and his judgment and his wisdom and experience and his lifetime observations and listened to the feeling in his heart. And that, some may think that's extreme. I don't.
Well, I hope the next time we come into your Institute of Religion, you're all sitting together talking face to face.
And not waiting around, men. Not waiting around.
I think we've probably got this message through, haven't we? We've done our best.
I think it's crystal clear.
Yes, that was great advice.